Welcome back to Learn Economia. Today we are going to discuss the idea called ethics of environmental sustainability. So let's analyze what is it all about regarding ethics of environmental sustainability. In this scenario, we need to understand first of all what does it mean by environmental sustainability. So when you talk about the word sustainable, the idea of sustainability here involves we can go for development, especially when you talk about sustainable development. We could find that the present generation can develop present development, but it should not cause a problem to future development. So the present development should not be at the cost of future generation. So we know that for development, we require several raw materials. For example, we require energy, especially. We require water. We require sunlight. We require natural energy sources like coal or crude oil. So everything we require wind and so on. We require soil again. So what will happen when we use these resources? When we use these resources, that will be helping us to have more production, and also that would be assisting in more development, isn't it? But when we are using, for example, we are taking water. What happens when we are using water, or you call it as sometimes overusing, or which is otherwise termed as over exploitation? So what would happen if you're over exploiting water? So this generation is exploiting water, which is a kind of misuse to an extent. We might be wasting water without proper methods of preservation and conservation. So that will be creating water scarcity for the future generation. So this is done by the present generation. And coming to the future generation, there will exist a water scarcity. So this situation should not be there. How to prevent this situation? In order to prevent such kind of a situation, this generation or the present generation has to use all the natural resources, whether it is water or sunlight or crude oil or wind or soil or whatever other types of natural resources. We have to use it accordingly by keeping into consideration that the next generation or the generations which are yet to come, they also have the same right like us to use the resources that we have in nature. So what we consider under the ethics of environmental sustainability here is we address the moral principles as well as values which are very much required to preserve our natural environment. And when we say natural environment, it consists of both biotic and abiotic factors. So that means we consider both living things in the environment as well as the non-living things in the environment, by taking into consideration the rights of both the current generation and future generation to make use of environment without harming any species that we have in the environment. So let's consider the details of ethics of environmental sustainability here. It takes into consideration intergenerational equity, like what I was telling you earlier. We need to identify this as our responsibility or our obligation, because future generation too will be having their requirements. they too will be having their rights to make use of the nature. And also, the main problem that we suffer here is that what we have in the form of natural resources, this is something finite. So what does it mean by finite? Finite means limited. So we are having limited resources in the environment. And what about the population? Population in for many countries it's increasing. So it's a competition that we could experience between increasing population and limited resources. So what will happen if this kind of tendency moves on? There can be competition, there can be a rivalry, there can be fight for resources. So this is the main reason why we could have the prices of certain environmental goods now increasing. So we know that certain goods like water, air, soil, so these are available for free to anyone because these are environmental goods. But what is happening now? Now you are having water available in the market as a private good. So you could get bottled water. So what is it all about, this bottled water? Bottled water is a private good. You could purchase it from any store. You could get cans of water. You could purchase it from any store. So we are talking about a scenario where the good which was earlier environmental good only, now this good is getting another status, that is private good. So earlier water was only environmental good, but now water in some instances is acting as private good as well. So it is having a price as well. So you cannot get it for free from any shop. You need to pay for that. The same happens in the case of air. You might be aware about the oxygen cylinder scenario. So you might be again aware of the requirement for oxygen, especially during the COVID pandemic. So otherwise also hospitals would be keeping oxygen cylinders with them. But during this COVID pandemic, the people with lung diseases like asthma and all, they were having more uh, likelihood, or they were having more possibility to get affected due to COVID. And the severity of the disease was again something very bad for these people, very high for these people. So the oxygen cylinders, the requirement of the same was getting increased during that time. So what about this oxygen cylinders? That is also that was also turning to be something called private good. So air is something that we call as environmental good, but during the time of COVID, the requirement for air as a private good increased because it was having a price. So that is why we consider it as a private good. You need to pay for that, otherwise you will not be getting. And this is also happening for soils. Soil, you could actually get it for free. It is available everywhere, right? But now things are changing. People could be purchasing sand, soil of different varieties, etc., from various sellers. So now that too is actually getting priced. Now that too, this environment good is also getting a status of private good. So why this has been happening? This has been happening due to the kind of problems related to scarcity and also the problems related to the mismatch between need as well as availability. Sometimes you require more of certain good, but that good might not be available in the exact quantity that you require. So what you do, you will be getting it from the market. So the same thing is happening. If things are going like this, these kind of tendencies will be there for some other types of environmental good as well. So resources are finite. It has been limited. It is limited in the economy, causing complications. Now, the next thing that we have to consider under the ethics of environmental sustainability is called the intragenerational equity. So what is it all about, intragenerational equity? Now, here we talk about the present generation itself. So what is happening with present generation? When we talk about present generation, here itself conflict is happening. Here itself competition is happening. Here itself people are competing for resources. So are we having a distributional justice? This is the question that we have to address here. So when it comes to distribution of resources, are we having this kind of a scenario here to ensure something called fair distribution? So when this question is asked, we have to understand that distribution is always unequal. And this is the main reason why certain regions are having water scarcity. So these kind of areas, they will be having difficulties here. They might be going for some alternative ways of making their uses or dealing with their uses. And also you could find that environmental issues are again very peculiar to certain regions. So certain regions are prone to cyclones, certain other regions are prone to earthquakes, certain other regions are prone to droughts, and certain other regions are prone to cyclones, droughts, floods, etc., and so on. So why you could find that some flood, if it is happening in one part of the world, will be having its impact on every other parts of the world. It is not happening, right? So if there is a flood in the northern side of in the northernmost point or in the southernmost point of a particular country, why it is not having its same impact felt on other parts of the country? So that means even environmental issues are causing some differences between different nations. So that is yet another aspect that you have to consider. And also you need to understand that whenever you consider this intra-generational equity, it should be something to talk about distributional justice, whether resources are equally distributed or not. But here the answer is unfortunately no, resources are not distributed equally to every part of the country or every part of the world. For example, in certain areas there would be water scarcity, whereas in certain other areas people would be over exploiting water resources. Now, respect for nature. So this is something which we have to consider as the next important aspect of ethics of environmental sustainability. So this shows that we have to respect nature. So it talks about the intrinsic value of nature. Definitely, nature will have got a particular value. So we always attach a value to nature because we know that we cannot live without nature. So for the very same reason, it is the responsibility of every person to respect nature, to protect nature, and to preserve nature. And why should this be done? This is done not only for ourselves, but also for nature. Also for nature. For the nature's sake as well, we need to do this. So whenever we do something, we always consider our own benefit. So we are always selfish. People are always selfish. But this shouldn't be done in the case of nature. Nature should be protected not only for us, but also for the nature. So this is yet another aspect when you consider the ethics of environmental sustainability. Tell us. Now, the stewardship and responsibility. It talks about our obligations. Obligation. It is all about the responsible management. So why should you be talking about responsible management? To ensure that there exists minimum wastage. So why should there be minimum wastage? Because I told you in the very beginning that we do have only limited resources and we need to protect it not only for us but also future, and also for the sake of nature we need to protect nature, right? So humans, everybody living in this planet, they have to understand this particular responsibility. Even a small child should be taught about such a responsibility. So that is the main reason why several school curriculum or the school curriculum of various various schemes would be implementing something called environmental science in their curriculum. Now, the precautionary principles. So we should always be aware about the future. Sometimes this awareness won't be there. So we know that there always exists some uncertainty element. So what is this uncertainty element talking about? This uncertainty element tells us that there is some problem that might happen. So you cannot say that there will not be earthquake, there will not be cyclone from now onwards. There can be. So we always expect some disaster at some or the other part of the country or part of the world. So we have to understand that there is a risk element lying in, and our intention is to prevent such kind of uncertainty or such kind of disaster. So how to prevent disasters? To prevent disasters, we have to take several mechanisms, several procedures, several techniques and so on. So such techniques again shouldn't be destroying the nature, which is yet another aspect that we have to consider. So which is yet another point to discuss under the ethics of environmental sustainability. Now, the sustainable development. I have already discussed this concept in the very beginning. I told you that we are trying to go for more development today without compromising the requirements of the future generation. So we develop today, but this shouldn't be at the cost of future generation, right? So it takes into consideration a multi-dimensional approach. A multi-dimensional approach. And why should you call this as a multi-dimensional approach? This is multi-dimensional approach because it has got economic elements, it has got social elements, it has got environmental elements, and also, of course, political considerations too would be coming here. And why are you actually integrating everything? So we are trying to have a balance. And why should you talk about a balance? Because we are talking about a long-term scenario. We should be concerned about our environment not only regarding what is happening today, but also we should be conscious about what would be happening in tomorrow's case. So that is yet another aspect. Now, the ethical principles that we have discussed so far would be assisting in policy development. Why? Because the policy makers too should be taking measures to deal with environmental quality. So it's the responsibility of the policy makers to ensure that there are adequate policies to reduce pollution. There are adequate policies to protect nature and so on. So this will be very, very important to ensure that people are also getting some awareness regarding the requirement to protect nature. So that is all for today. You can download Learn Economy app where you will be getting previous year question papers and answers, free study materials, live as well as recorded classes, and free MCQ based weekly tests. Just do one thing. You can click on to the link that I'll be providing in the description box so that you can download Learn Economy app. And also you can subscribe to our channel. You can like and share these sessions. And also you can join our free Telegram community. I'll be providing the link in the description box. That's it. Thank you for watching.